Dr. Carol Tempel is the new Charleston County School Board member to represent District 9, James Island, and parts of downtown Charleston. I talked one-on-one with Dr. Tempel about her big win on Tuesday night and what she'll do for the district on the school board for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Dr. Carol Tempel, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. It's good to see you.
Likewise, and congratulations on your win.
Thanks. I'm excited about winning. It was a up and down campaign, that's for sure. Had some challenges, but we overcame. Over 8,000 voters showed up at the polls to vote for me, so that was good. I think it said a lot that people out here were very interested in public education and in their children's learning. So, and a lot of teachers showed up, so I was really happy about that.
Absolutely. And I thought you were froze there for a second, but let me ask you, what were those obvious challenges in your race?
Well, I mean, it's always a challenge to run, to have enough of the financial resources, for one thing, so that you can do your mailers and emails and texting and yard signs and that kind of thing. So had a lot of people who just stepped up early to, give me those resources. So that was one challenge. Another challenge was just, working with volunteers. I myself was my own campaign manager, although, I had a really good treasurer and had a good data manager, and then I had a person who helped me with, my emails and Facebook postings. So that was really helpful. And then the challenge was, at the last part of the campaign, the Coalition for Kids was involved with doing a push poll, trying to assess, what might be some issues to put out there that voters might not like. And then, at the very end, there were attack mailers that were sent to voters. And so, I had to, hope that my relationships with people were strong enough and that people knew that the attack ads were just not true. And I think voters, showed that in this election. So that was a challenge. I mean, it's like, I'm not used to being attacked. I'm used to being praised and respected.
Sure.
So that was disturbing, and we're all human, and when you see those things, you think, oh my gosh, but a lot of people were there to lift me up. I always said, I've got big wings, and I need the support. So that, so it worked out all right. It probably backfired on him.
And Dr. Tempel, obviously you've developed a lot of relationships over the past decades here in the Low Country. So what relationships do you want to form when you when you do get elected, get sworn in next week Friday at the Charleston County School District and on the school board?
Yeah, well, campaigning, you have a chance to meet a lot of people, but there were, in ways in which some of the forums were structured, right, there are people that I didn't meet in some of the districts, and then some of the candidates didn't participate in the surveys or the forums. So, I've always believed that the important thing in education, especially in the classroom, was building relationships. And then, as a principal, guess what it was? Building relationships. So I'm looking forward to meeting the people who are newly elected, because they represent someone who was supported by the voters. And so I respect that, and I hope that we'll be able to find common ground with each other. So I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. We meet everyone on Monday. There's a board meeting, and then there's a reception afterwards with the board members who will be exiting, and then the actual installation, I guess you might call it, on Friday. So So start forging those relationships. I'm trying to find the surveys that people did so I get an understanding of, where they're coming from and what their interests are.
So let me ask you this. What are their interests right now when it comes to education in Charleston County?
Well, I know what my interests are. My interests are addressing the student achievement. Now, you want to call it the achievement gap, you want to call it the opportunity gap. We have to look at where our students are in terms of achievement, and we definitely have to look at the demographics. It's unacceptable to have so many of our African American students not performing where we know they can be. So that's one challenge. Another challenge will be the teachers. We need to respect our teachers, and we need to pay our teachers. I mean, one of the things I would like to do is to ask when it's time to develop the budgets. I'd like to see a budget that starts teacher salaries at $50,000, at $55,000, at $60,000, and see what would it take to be able to pay our teachers a living wage so they can, stay and live in our community. So those are a couple of challenges, and then of course, I think that we will have to address hiring a new superintendent, either deciding that we stay as we are for a while, or we initiate the procedure for hiring a new superintendent. So those are some challenges right off the bat.
So let me ask you, Dr. Temple, how should the Charleston County School District match teachers' pay with today's inflation?
Well, I think we have to look at what the inflation rate is. I think we have to look at what is the housing rate for a single teacher, and then a teacher who could be the sole breadwinner in their home. I think the chamber and some of the economic people in our community can help us with that, but we know that teachers cannot live on $40,000 a year.
So what exactly is the housing rate in your district where I'm sitting right now, parts of downtown Charleston?
Well, let me put it this way, Quintin. We're here on James Island, right? And the house across the street from us is a 3-bedroom house, and it has a family of with 3 children and 2 adults, and the rent is $2,700 a month. So, friend of mine he's had an apartment for a long time, just a small studio apartment, and his rent is $1,200 a month. So it's getting steep, a lot steeper than what my first apartment was when I started teaching.
What was that?
I love this. In Los Angeles, $90 a month.
Huh.
$90 a month, and my salary was about $4,500, and I bought a new car, a new Chevy, and that was $2,200 for the car, and I paid off the car my first year, teaching. So anyway, we've got to get realistic here.
So let me ask you this. Then I know this might be a off-balance question, but what current public and private partnerships would you be in favor for helping the school district get the teachers paid to where it should be?
Well, I don't know if we can attack it by public-private partnerships. I mean, I have said many times that I think a lot of the philanthropers in our community would do well if they supported the teachers, if they use their resources, to help the schools, not control the schools, but to support the schools and support the teachers. So I don't know. I don't know if they're open to that kind of philanthropy, but that would be the public-private partnership I would look at. I mean, if you have some other ideas, I'd be open to it.
So how do you develop the budget with this situation?
Well, I think you have to start with what do you want to see. You begin what Stephen Covey said. You begin with the end in mind, right? And so if you want to have the teachers have the salary that we think they need and have the class sizes where they ought to be, that's what you project. How many students do we have? How many teachers do we need? And then you set that budget, and then you back into what it is you need, and you figure out, what's essential, and then, what is not essential to the instruction that needs to go on in the classroom. And we have facility, requirements. There's always the electric bill and the water bill and the gas bill. So you figure out those kinds of essential things.
So what do the teachers in your district need right now, Dr. Temple?
Well, they need respect. They're working really, really hard. And I think we need to recognize that. And our teachers need some stability with what the curriculum is and professional development and time to work with the new curriculum. We have a new ELA, English Language Arts curriculum, and a new math curriculum. So they need time to, work with that, have any professional development that's needed, time for reflection. I always believe that as I worked with teachers implementing things, it was always good to pull the teachers together and say, hey, what's working well? What ideas can we share with each other? And then, move forward that. How are the students doing, with it? What adjustments do I need to make? So those would be some things besides what I have already said about class size and teacher pay.
And so what works well with this new curriculum?
Well, they seem to like the new curriculum. The new ELA curriculum seems to have a lot of high student interest. The students are working together on projects. The children have some choices as to what they're interested in doing. And I have to tell you, I really do want to see what the Bridges math curriculum looks like in the classroom, and recognize that we've had COVID, so that's been a problem for bringing people into the school. But now that I'm elected, I should be able to request times to observe the teachers teaching the curriculum and the students learning. I'm looking forward to being able to do that. That wasn't possible while I was a candidate.
Wow. So what professional development choices should they be made when it comes to this curriculum?
Well, teachers teachers know what they need. And so you work with, assessing what do the teachers need in terms of professional development. They don't always all need the same thing, but that doesn't mean that there aren't, 100 teachers who need the same thing. I mean, but you need to assess what they're asking for. You have to ask them, what do you need help with? And then the curriculum specialists work on developing that professional development. And a lot of professional development is actually done by the teachers. When I was working, I had a cadre of teacher leaders who were very skilled at doing, different things, and they taught their colleagues, because we all can learn from each other, and that's where that professional development comes in. It's not always that you're paying somebody to come in. Maybe initially you might do that, but then you want to build your own bench, so to speak, of teacher leaders who can teach other teachers.
And what type of bench would be ideal now?
What do you mean, what kind of bench?
Would be ideal for those teachers in that particular professional development setting for Charleston County?
Yeah, I don't know, Quintin. That's one of the things that I'm hoping that when I'm on the board that we'll, see the superintendent and the new deputy superintendent saying, hey, we've been assessing, what the professional needs are, and we need, this much time and this many people to teach. So that comes with assessment and evaluation. And I have a feeling that our new leadership is tuned in to asking those kinds of questions.
Oh, good.
If not, I will be.
Yeah, I know you will. I know you'll ask the tough questions as well. So,
friend who said, congratulations. And then she said, and my husband said, well, she'll be asking a lot of questions. But I hope I ask the right questions, just like you do.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much. And I know I'm probably getting ahead of myself, Dr. Temple, but let's go to the superintendent. Okay. Should the new school board that is, just wait and keep Dr. Kennedy as interim right now until they start the initiation of the hiring of the new superintendent?
Well, I think we have to keep Mr. Kennedy, in place until we can hire a new superintendent. And I think that, we'll have to work on initiating the process.
Right.
And it may be that, Mr. Kennedy is in the best position to continue, for a while. I don't know what his long-term, short-term interests are, but I think we need to start the process and have those serious conversations, and then really work with the firms who I think the firms have been selected,
right? And
so now work with those firms to make sure that we give a set of criteria that we're looking for. I mean, I'm looking for, I've worked with 7 or 8 different superintendents, so I'm looking for someone who's going to have a good student-teacher parent focus on student and focused on student performance. I would hope that we could find a superintendent who has worked with increasing teacher pay. I know there are superintendents out there who have done that and addressed the working conditions. And I want to see a superintendent who values our community and is interested in our community and has experiences with increasing student achievement and is going to respect our teachers and engage our parents and community. The best superintendents I've seen are those who quickly, if they're not of the community, they quickly relate to the community. That's and the staff and the teachers. That's just really important. And I want somebody who's really committed to public education, not the privatization of our schools, but building our neighborhood schools so that our parents and students have choices that meet their needs.
So how do you build your neighborhood schools now in your district?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we have to do is respect, first of all, the schools create their school improvement plans, and we need to look at, what are the schools asking for, and asking, I like the community schools model.
Oh, yes.
And that's a model that begins with the needs assessment of, the students, what do you need, the teachers, the parents, the community, and then you build, those plans and requests around that need. That's how you build up your, community schools, and you engage the parents, you get them involved in ways that enhance what's going on in the school, and you empower the teachers to to work out some of those kinks that that often occur, and that they're looking at their data and saying, this is what would make our school better. So it's all of that collaboration, and then working with the constituent boards as well, because our constituent boards, they hear the discipline cases, and a lot of times it's out of your discipline cases that you see the weaknesses in your school program.
So how do you build student achievement right now in your district?
Well, again, the teachers need to look at the data. I'm working with the Stylus Point School Improvement Council and that school, and those teachers spent a lot of time this summer thinking about how do they group and regroup students, and how do they work in tutoring. And my husband is volunteering 2 days a week at Murray Lassane, working with some children who are struggling with their reading, and he's helping them build up their fluency and their confidence, and have a little joy with somebody. So that's how you build it up. You have to set it as a goal, and that's what thing we're good at as teachers, is figuring out how do we help children learn. Who's struggling, and what can I do? I mean, it's like my son, for example, when he was in 5th grade, was really struggling with fractions. Well, we figured out, we got a piece of paper, cut it in a circle, cut it up in pieces, and, worked on helping him see what these fractions really, meant. So we have the tools. We, as teachers, we know how to do this.
Wow. So what do these achievement gaps mean to you and the school district?
Achievement gap means to me that we're not addressing the student needs. Now, one of the things, Quintin, that I did when I was working on my doctorate, I pulled together 32 teachers, and our whole purpose of my doctorate was to build teacher efficacy and to have teachers work on addressing the needs and achievement in their classes. So it varied, because we had elementary teachers and high school teachers. And I'll tell you one of the stories out of the high school. The high school physics teacher said, "My boys are doing really well in physics, but my girls aren't doing so well." And so we started researching, well, how do girls learn? How do boys learn? And these were the changes she made based on the research that she did. She said, okay, when we're doing hands-on experiments, I'm pulling the girls together. Their team is going to work, and then the boys will work, because what she saw happening when she was really observing was that the boys were taking over the experiments and doing it, and the girls just sat back and watched the boys do the work, right? Okay, so the other thing that happened is the boys very quickly saw the results of the experiment, analyzed the data, came up with their conclusions. Now, the girls, on the other hand, when they were working, we women like to talk. So we like to process things. The girls would have to process, what did you see? Are you sure you saw it? Did you see something different? They would talk about it. So the teacher, had her kids for the experiment, hand-on experiments. The boys were working and the girls were working, and then of course the teacher had the challenge of, what do I do with these boys when they're done? So she had an extra assignment for them. But that was the kind of thing that happened with the teachers doing what we call in the field is action research.
Okay.
And so the teachers were doing action research projects to address the achievement in their classrooms. And I had 32 teachers, and we had 18 different projects. And the one regret I had is that I didn't go back and publish the data and all of the experiments that we did, because it was phenomenal work that the teachers were doing, and we were closing the achievement gap.
How do you close that achievement gap with the African American demographics in the schools, and actually, get those kids, some sort of help? But also, Dr. Tempel, which action research should the school district do right now on that demographic?
Well, I think we need to pull the teachers together. I mean, action research is a form of professional development, and I think when you pull teachers together, and you offer a course, because teachers have to take courses to recertify, and they engage in action research, and they look at what the problems are in their particular classroom, and then they start to look at, discuss what strategies might work, and you try out those strategies and you start working with it. I mean, if you find it's not just, African American learners. I mean, there are all kinds of learners. But if you find out like somebody is like, my son who needed manipulatives to grab hold of the concept. Right. But I also know that my friend Maida Van Sickle, who is working with African American students out at St. John's, found that rhythm helped them with their math. Well, that's what you do. You figure out what are some techniques and strategies to work with the children that help them with learning in the way that they're going to learn. That's just that's kind of how it works, Quintin.
That's exactly right. And how did it work?
Not exactly magic.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what a skilled teacher does. She figures out and she learns. You want to have a lot of tools in your toolkit to pull out ways that you figure out how kids learn. I mean, I had a boy in my first year of teaching who answered all the questions, appropriately when I asked him the questions, but when I gave him the paper to do the test, he could not read. And so that was when I took him aside and tested him orally, and he passed my biology class because he knew the biology. The problem was the reading. So then we had to work on, I had to try to get him help with his reading. But yeah, that's what you do is you adjust the strategies to meet the learner. And it takes some flexibility on the part of a teacher, and it's hard to do that when you're a first or second year teacher. It takes time to build.
And how much time will it take for the Charleston County School District to build those reading levels for the African American students?
Hopefully not too long. I mean, we've just got to, I think we have a new curriculum in place that seems to be working well. It's a research-based curriculum. So if the research is valid, which I would trust that it is, we should start making some progress. And I know the district is very interested in boosting up its early childhood education programs, and that's a big piece of it in terms of the achievement gap. We have to build up our early childhood programs, because I mean there's research out there that shows, Quintin, that when children come to school with a very limited vocabulary, that you have to build their vocabulary, their color recognition, their counting, and so on. So if a kid comes with, a 200 or 300 word vocabulary, it's harder than. So then what you're doing then is trying to build not only their social skills when they're little, but also their verbal skills and their word, building up their speaking vocabulary before you can address their reading vocabulary. I mean, it's like, if you don't know, if you see a word and you don't know what it is, I mean, it's hard to attach meaning to it. So I know George is seeing that as he's working with his readers, that they look at pictures and then the word and make connections between, ideas and words and that kind of thing.
Wow. And speaking of connections, let's talk about counting. When it comes to your election, how did you do? Did you win big by early voting or just by general election day votes?
I don't know the difference between that. Because it's been a little hard to. The data is still kind of rolling in, so I don't know. I'm very curious to see how I did by precinct, early voting. It seemed to me, I mean, I got some 8,000 votes. It seemed to me, based on the 2 weeks of early voting, that about half the people maybe voted early and then the half on election day, because there were not long lines at election day. Usually at James Island High School, there'll be a long line, even, past 7 o'clock. And it wasn't. There was just one person who came running in at 7 to make the deadline. So it was very, very steady pace. Now, I think that maybe the voting wasn't as strong. Looking at what some of the statistics are now, that not as many people turned out, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was, half and half. We'll have to see.
Yes,
but that was just, that's just my observation.
yes, ma'am.
I was at the polls, on election day, and then early voting, not every day, but just kind of, a sense of what was going on. So
yeah, that's great to
like
hear.
early voting, that's for sure.
They do indeed. Yes, ma'am. Well, Charleston County School Board member Dr. Carol Tempel, thank you for your time, and again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Thanks for all those good questions. Coming.
I definitely will.